Hi, and welcome to my presentation on independent studies for BMA's Contemporary Music Performance third year, specifying on guitar. For my independent study, I chose to look into live looping and loop recording on Boss and Ableton. This subject has always fascinated me as I've adapted my work live on stage to include live looping, such as solo pieces, duos, and a band setting with vocals and drums. For the dissertation, I intended to look into how other artists use Boss Roland Corporation loop-in styles and their equipment that they use, as well as Ableton Live. I also wanted to look into the history of looping, where it started and where it's going, and how the industry is reacting to looped performances. I found this equally as interesting as the way that Ed Sheeran has adapted his work as a loop artist into the mainstream media and onto chart works with his songs, as well as Jack Garrett and DJ artists such as Rachel K. Collier and Disclosure. Um, Ableton Live was a new subject of mine as I primarily use Boss R300 loop stations. Therefore, I bought the software and spent most of the months through October to December understanding how to use Ableton Live and how to loop with it, how to use their softwares. The one difficulty with this was for Ableton, you need to have other hardwares such as sampling pads. You need a keyboard to use it as well. You can't just use the MIDI setup. So most of my research went into how other people did their work, such as Rachel K. Collier. Rachel is an interesting artist for me, as I remember her being solely a folk musician, and then suddenly gave it a couple of years and she transitioned into loop styles. So she was somebody who I really wished to have interviewed for my dissertation. However, that didn't become possible due to COVID-19, and I couldn't find a way to contact her online. So I had to get all of my information about her looping style with Ableton through YouTube tutorials that she's done. I also spoke to people who have been to her Ableton Live sessions and asked them for how it helped them with their own loops. I also went to Nosdar in Cardiff to talk to the artists there, as they have a festival that goes on, a little competition with looping styles. Therefore, artists around Wales and Cardiff were able to go around in the competition setting and do a little loop. I found this quite interesting to see how people interpret their live looping styles and see what equipment they used. The majority used RC300 units, which was nice for me, as it shows that the direction that I'm going is not only a popular direction, but also a sonically interesting direction to go to. With Boss in mind, I spent the past year researching. I actually read the manual of the RC300 just to understand how to use the piece of software intricately, how to connect it to my MacBook and use it as a MIDI send. My singer also bought her own RC300 units, and I learned about MIDI syncs through slave setups, tempo syncs, and loop syncs, which I eventually ended up using in my guitar recital for third year. And I explain in my dissertation the types of capabilities you can use with the Boss Roland RC300 unit. One interesting result of my dissertation that came through was the understanding that Ed Sheeran used to use RC20 units, and I assumed that he used RC300 units and upgraded or uses RC505 or any other type of loop-in station from the boss. However, he actually created his own called the Chewy Monster and then Chewy Monster 2. I don't know where he got that name from. I did wish to talk to people connected to Ed Sheeran, however, that wasn't also possible either, which was unfortunate because I thought I'd be able to reach out to them via email due to COVID. I thought people would be more available. That wasn't the case. But yeah, he uses the Chewy Monster, which I noticed was actually for Chewy Monster. There were actually 4 RC20 loop stations that were programmed to MIDI sync together, and then he had one for all off. He had 2 displays, and I went to a rack there where he controlled everything, and this allowed him to have his full performance that he does with completely live loop-in. He is an amazing example of what you can do due to him playing Wembley Stadium, a one-man show in front of thousands of people. I think that's really respectable and showcases loop-in in a perfect way. One thing I touched up in my dissertation, where I didn't believe I would go, was how authentic it was to be a loop musician, and whether it took away your authenticity through your music. The one reason this arose was due to personal experiences using pre-recorded material in live gigs, and even asking my tutor Luke Bradshaw if I could pre-record for my loops, as I believe there's a split decision between, or a split opinion between individuals, where they believe that pre-recorded loops whilst live looping it makes you inauthentic, it destroys the characteristic of live looping, whereas other people believe it creates a live sound and adapts the music rather than destroying it. If I were to do this dissertation again, or if I had more time, I would have definitely tried to interview somebody who was a live loop-in artist, as I did email and I contacted and I constantly tried to message a lot of people, including Elise True, Rachel K. Collier. I spoke to Ed Sheeran's technician and he couldn't get anything through. I spoke to Jack Garrett, but nothing came of that, which was unfortunate. Therefore, I had only information online, which is not something that I wanted to do. But I believe it got my point across. It allowed me to understand the looping techniques, looping artists, and the whole movement and genre. And ended up being quite a successful pitch, in my opinion, to inform people who may have not understood this technique to now understand, and hopefully allow them to grow their own music and their own artistry to provide loop-in for themselves. Cool. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Gareth Jones, 1705 2246. Hope to see you soon.